afternoon, Rotarians and guests. My name is Philip Endersby and I am your MC for today. We would like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people, or Wurundjeri of the Bunurong people of the Kulin Nation, I'll get that right, and also pay our respects to elders past, present and future, and extend that respect to all Indigenous Australians present today. Welcome to our hybrid meeting, to those online and those in the room. The reflection today will be given by past President Adrian Nelson, followed by the loyal toast presented by President-elect Branko Panic. Please ensure your glass is charged. I welcome Adrian.
Well, thank you, Philip, and good afternoon, fellow Rotarians and friends. August is Rotary Membership Month, a time when we're encouraged to invite others to experience Rotary and to reflect on what makes our organisation so special. So today, rather than focusing on Sir John Monash himself, I thought we'd begin by remembering one of the men who invited Monash to become a Rotarian in the first place. Lieutenant Colonel James Leighton Ralston arrived in Australia in March 1921, alongside James Wheeler Davidson. Both were distinguished Canadian Rotarians commissioned by Rotary International to establish Rotary in Australia. Like Monash, Ralston was a lawyer, a decorated First World War officer, and a passionate believer that leadership carried an obligation to serve others. After the war, neither man simply returned to private life. Instead, they dedicated themselves to building stronger communities. When Ralston and Davidson met Sir John Monash in Melbourne, they found a kindred spirit. Here were three men from opposite sides of the world, all shaped by the tragedy of war. They were united by a conviction that peace would be advanced not only by governments, but through ethical leadership, friendship and service. Together, they established the Rotary Club of Melbourne, the first Rotary Club in Australia and New Zealand. Ralston later returned to Canada to become his nation's Minister of Defence during the Second World War, while Monash continued his extraordinary contribution to Melbourne. Their paths diverged, but they remained connected by a belief that leadership is measured not by rank or reputation, but by service. As we celebrate Membership Month, perhaps this story reminds us that a single invitation can have an extraordinary impact. Ralston invited Monash into Rotary. Today, each of us has the same opportunity to invite someone who may help shape Rotary Melbourne's next 100 years. For good food, good fellowship, and the opportunity to serve, we give thanks.
Rotarians and guests, a toast to Australia and Rotary International. Australia, Rotary International. We will be breaking for lunch, and for those online, we will be coming back at 1:10. We invite you to join one of the breakout rooms where you can enjoy fellowship with others who are online and alternatively take your lunch break. We'll see you back here at 1:10. Members, visitors and guests, it's my great pleasure to welcome you to our 6th meeting of this Rotary year and our 5,136th club meeting in our 106th year. It's wonderful to see you all here today and in great number. Also, welcome to all the people we have online today, as normally not everyone can make it in, particularly with the horrible weather, but thank you for coming. Today is a very significant day in the club's calendar, where we are awarding the Monash Medal. It's an honour to welcome our 2026 recipient, Lara Olson. Lara will be more formally introduced shortly by Stephen Lake, the chair of the club's 0808 committee, and is accompanied by her husband, Nicholas Francis Gilly, MBE. Welcome. Would you please acknowledge and make Lara and Nicholas both welcome? As a club guest, it's my pleasure to warmly welcome our District Governor, Graham Hope. We are delighted to welcome back also past District Governor Peter Shepherd. Also here and hosted by the 0808 committee, we are honoured to have with us several distinguished previous recipients of the Monash Medal. Dr. Robert Webster, OAM, Richard Elkington, OAM, Major General Jim Barry, AM, MBE, RFD, ED, retired, Professor Peter Darwell, AO, and Emeritus Professor Major General Jeffrey Rosenfeld, AC, OBE, retired. We also extend a warm welcome to members of the Spirit of Australia Foundation, Michael Bennett, great-grandson of Sir John Monash, Director David Polonsky, Michael Hedbury, Chair saluting Monash Council, and Karen McGonigal, Executive Director of the Leadership Academy at the Sir John Monash Foundation. Finally, we welcome City of Melbourne Councillor Raphael Camillo, and from the Victorian Division of Engineers Australia, Jerry Andrews, and Jerry Andrews, General Manager, together with his colleagues. Please join me in acknowledging and making all of these visitors welcome. We also have other visiting Rotarians, visitors and guests of members. I invite you to stand with your host when your name is announced and ask that you please remain standing to enable the club to welcome you in a collective manner. We have Beck Dash, a guest of Andrew Morris, Misha Coleman, also a guest of Andrew Morris, Andrew Eddy, a guest of Anthony Austin, Karen McConaglu, sorry Karen, a visitor, John Van Setten, Ross Youngman, Janine Shearer, Xuan Tan, Andrea May, and Jonathan Anazado, a guest of Deaf in Food. To all our guests, thank you for joining us today. We're delighted to have you here with us. Please join me in making them all welcome. I now call Jim Orchard from the Community Welfare Committee to launch the club's 2026 fundraising for the Smith family.
Thank you, Branko. A little bit of a soft launch. We might have several launches just to keep things interesting. But we are gearing up for our annual Smith family fundraising project. And as many of you will already know, all the money raised goes to the Smith family's Learning for Life program, which helps children and young adults from underprivileged backgrounds achieve their full academic potential. This continues to be a great project and one that I'm more than happy to support, but today I want to shift the focus a little bit and emphasise how this project offers volunteering opportunities that are not only beneficial to other people and help society, but also promote fellowship within the club. So two opportunities. Firstly, we will be running drink stations for the Melbourne Marathon on Saturday, October 10 and Sunday, October the 11th. Doesn't go for 2 days to counter for slow runners. There's different races on the different days. And we're putting together a team of about 25 or 30 for each day. And we'd love to have a few more helpers to hand out drinks to the literally thousands of thirsty runners that are running by. So if you're interested in that, and we already do have quite a number of volunteers, so thank you for those that have already put their hand up. Please let me know and I'll get you all signed up. Fun day, and you meet lots of people, all be working as a team. Secondly, we will again be putting together a team of riders for the Around the Bay event, which is the next Sunday. So Sunday, October 18th. So if you're a bike rider and you're interested in riding part of the way around the bay, you don't have to ride all the way around the bay, perhaps from Sorrento or Frankston into the city. You can join with fellow Rotarians like past President Phil Endersby and do it as part of our team Rotary. So a couple of opportunities to volunteer, simple opportunities, work as a team. It's a one and done. There's no obligation once you do this, except I will contact you obviously next year. But for the rest of this year, it's just a one and done. So if you're interested in either of those, good opportunity to meet other Rotarians, to mix in perhaps a less formal setting than we have today. Let me know, we'll get you signed up. And I'm sure that Sir John Monash would endorse these endeavours It's all volunteers, and he was the leader of an all-volunteer army. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. I've also just been notified of one additional special visitor who I'd like to acknowledge. Beverly MacArthur MP is also with us. So welcome, Beverly. Just running through some notices. So reminder that this weekend, the 0808 at the Shrine event is on at 10:30 a.m. on Saturday morning. This is a service commemorating the Battle of Amiens and our second president, Sir John Monash, and it's on at 10:30 a.m. rather than the usual very early dawn type service. So I'll be able to make it too. That's great. It's a terrific opportunity to really be up close and in the inner sanctum of the shrine for a short service, which will be followed by an address by Karen McGonigal, Executive Director, Leadership Academy of the General Sir John Monash Foundation. If you're wanting to attend the event on Saturday morning, please contact Joe in the office to register your interest. Now to the business of the day. I call to the podium our chair of the day, Stephen Lake, to take over today's meeting.
Again, I welcome with pleasure all the guests of the club today. It's lovely to see so many supporters of the club every year turn out for this Monash Week. I say Monash Week because we're kicking it off today with the luncheon and the presentation of the Monash Medal. On Friday, the Spirit of Australia Foundation is holding a Monash commemorative service at the Victorian Parliament, which we've had a little hand in over the years. Then on Saturday, the Shrine service, and then finally next February, Kevin Sheehan will be involved in the Leadership Academy with the Spirit of Australia Foundation. So it really is the kick-off to a year's activities. I'm delighted to announce that the winner of the Monash Medal 2026 is Lara Olson, a Rotary exchange student to Akita, Japan in 1993 and a Monash Scholarship winner in 2004. She's had a career in leading major projects and organisations in Australia's utilities and energy sector, and you'll hear more of that when we read out the citation. So I'd like to ask President Franco and Michael Bennett, the great-grandson of Sir John Monash, to come to the podium to assist with the presentation. Lara, would you like to join us up here? So firstly, I'd call on Michael Bennett to present the medal.
I know. I've known you for so many years as a John Monash scholar, and it's so appropriate with all your graduates.
Thank you. Thank you.
And now I'd call on President Branco to present, President-elect, I'm ahead of myself, to present the citation, which I'll read out to you in a moment. Lara Olson exemplifies leadership, integrity and service through a career dedicated to Australia's clean energy and water sectors. She led strategy at the Australian Renewable Energy Agency, ARENA, and at City Power Corp. Later, she led the policy development for Tesla Energy's Australia Pacific grid-scale storage business, and she oversaw the landmark Neon Tesla Hornsdale big battery in South Australia. As former Managing Director of Southeast Water, she was entrusted with delivering water and wastewater services to nearly 2 million Victorians, a responsibility demanding rigorous governance. Her board chair at the time publicly credited her with an ability to balance multiple stakeholders while empowering teams and creating trust, which is reflected in board roles within the Clean Energy Council, the Water Services Association of Australia, and soon to be announced ARENA. She's recognised as a Fellow of the Australian Academy of Technological Sciences and Engineering in 2023. Lara also actively mentors the next generation through gender equity and diversity programs in engineering and technology. Congratulations, Lara. Now, with all those credentials, I think Lara is particularly well placed to talk about leadership, integrity and service.
Thank
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction and the acknowledgement of country. I am deeply honoured and humbled to receive this award. It means, it really does mean a great deal to me. And so in thinking about my speech today, I reflected on some of the great qualities of General Sir John Monash. Those of you that have read about him and know of his work know there are so many qualities that I could have chosen. But in particular today, I thought I'd highlight three that stand out to me because I think he exemplified them and also they're key for what we need in our world today. And so I looked at leadership, service and integrity and decided that is exactly how John Monash did everything. But I'm going to focus on the what in particular that I think he did. And for me, they were supporting education, inclusivity, and innovation. I know many of you will know his background, but I want to talk about why I chose these three. As you probably know, Monash was a voracious learner. He had degrees in engineering, in arts, in law. He supported education not just by doing it himself, but for others. There's many famous quotes that he has, but equip yourself for life is one of the ones that people often refer to. And then he went on later in his career to become the Vice-Chancellor for Melbourne University. And I think that starts to exemplify what we can all do if we keep opening ourselves up to different ideas and look to encourage others to have those same opportunities. The second quality I chose was inclusivity. When you read about Monash's work on the battlefield, many people highlight his incredible strategic thinking, his way of planning. But for me, one of the things that really stands out was that he used to ask all of the leaders of his different units to review the plan that he had to make sure that it was better and to make sure that they understood it. As you know, Monash faced racism and anti-Semitism and worked through that to rise where he got to. And many people spoke about how he led in a different way, that he valued his troops regardless of their background. Again, I think a very important quality for what we all need today. And the third one was innovation. Yes, Monash was innovative on the battlefield in terms of his approaches. As an engineer, exciting in terms of what he did in reinforced concrete. And I promise not to speak too long about reinforced concrete, but incredible in terms of how he changed how bridges are built. But he also understood that innovation involves risk. One of my favourite parts of the Monash profile that's on the Engineers Australia website speaks about that Monash learned from every mistake that he made and every mistake that he saw. And I think to truly deliver on education, on inclusivity and innovation, you need to put service above self. And I know that that is the motto of Rotary, and I think that's what John Monash demonstrated. And so today, as I touch on these three qualities, I also want to thank the institutions, two of which are in this room, that invested in me to help me get here today. And it's sort of my way as a chance to reflect on John Monash, but also to thank Rotary and the Sir General John Monash Foundation for allowing me to have so many opportunities to be here today. So the first thing that I want to talk about was my Rotary exchange student experience. As at 16, as an introvert, as an absolutely enthusiastic but deeply uncool high school student who loved maths, I became a Rotary exchange student. I can't explain to you what that meant to me. I couldn't believe that a group of people who didn't know me backed me to go overseas and thought that I'd be able to learn something. It started to open up my confidence and also my thoughts on the world. My time in Japan also really opened up my thoughts about education and inclusivity. From an education perspective, Japan taught me that the Japanese people had concepts and words that we didn't even have words for. It taught me that if I could spend time with people from a background that was different to mine, I could learn more things that I could ever do at home. And it also taught me about inclusivity. Back in the early 90s, Australia didn't really travel to Japan, or Australians, as frequently as they do now. The small village that I stayed in, sponsored by the Japanese Rotary Club there, had never had a foreigner stay overnight. I was different clearly from my village and from all the other students in school, but I felt like I was treated as an equal. And that taught me a lot about what it meant to be different. It's the first time that I really understood what it was like to be in minority, but also how powerful it was when the majority make you feel included. And it made me hunger to learn more. I know that many of you might be involved in the exchange program today. Maybe you raise funds for it, you would administer it, or you open up your homes to have those students in. I'm not sure what all of those thousands of students have taken from that program, but it gave me a hunger to understand more about the world that I didn't know outside of Melbourne. The second investment from an institution in me that really changed my life was that from the General Sir John Monash Foundation. And that's why it's a particular honour for me to receive the medal today. For those that don't know, the foundation was started in 2001 by a group of Australians who wanted to form an alternative to the Rhodes Scholarship. They wanted an Australian scholarship for Australians that allowed students to go to whatever university they wanted to enable them to come best in their field. And they wanted that focus for those students to be on the values that John Monash demonstrated. That foundation now has sponsored over 300 students at 65 different universities in 21 different fields of studies. The scholars there are incredible. I feel very lucky I snuck in on that first year. But I want to give you a sense of some of those scholars. One of them is Professor Mark Dawson. Some of you may know him. A Victorian who focuses on cancer research and particularly the progression of cancer. Mark has won the Prime Minister's Prize for Life Scientists. He's won a slew of international awards. Most recently, he was at the Peter MacCallum Centre and now leads pharmaceutical research and early development for Roche Australia. Sonia Loudon is another of the scholars. She believed that education could be done differently, particularly for underserved communities. So leaving from Victoria, she furthered her studies, is now an assistant principal at one of the Victorian secondary schools, particularly where the ATAR scores have been some of the lowest in the state. And she and her colleagues there are already putting in programs that have started to lift those ATAR results and also lift the ongoing attendance at school. Finally, Sarah Leary is another great example. A proud Palawa woman from Tasmania. She's an experienced diplomat who's worked in Cambodia, Vietnam, the US, Solomon Islands. She's furthered her studies in understanding the Australian-Pacific relationship and how she might be able to contribute to that. After I did my exchange student in Japan with Rotary, I studied arts, Japanese at University of Melbourne and started working at the Boston Consulting Group with Brancode. Working at BCG showed me how critical economics and the market was to whether change happened or not. I was still definitely focused on if I could deliver engineering solutions that had a global impact. I just started to realise that without understanding economics, I may not succeed like I'd hoped to. The John Monash Scholarship allowed me to study my MBA at INSEAD France. For those that don't know that school, it's currently ranked second in global MBAs just after MIT and has a particular focus on innovation and entrepreneurship. 73% of the students from there end up doing something entrepreneurial or innovation in their career. Going to INSEAD taught me the basics in terms of macroeconomics and mergers and acquisitions and accounting. But it also made me believe that my ideas could match it with other people around the world. I think up to that date, I'd always thought about going overseas to keep learning, and that is something that I continue to do. But it also made me think that I could go overseas and start to contribute. My career post that time, as Stephen has mentioned, has been predominantly in clean energy and also in water. I wanted to talk about some of the highlights because I feel that those three things, education, inclusivity, innovation, and the two investments that were made in me, helped me have the opportunities that I've had. As Stephen mentioned, I was the head of strategy when they first formed the Australian Renewable Energy Agency. My role was to work with the executive and the board to determine how Australia could best spend the $3.2 billion over 10 years to invest in the progress of renewable energy. With my colleague at the time, Mark Trudell, he and I came up with a tool called the Commercial Readiness Index so that we'd have a way of working out how technologies were becoming more bankable, how we could move them away from grants to being standalone. That index was subsequently taken up by other international agencies. It's used by the International Energy Agency to benchmark their technologies globally. And I think is a great demonstration of how Australia, through its institutions, ideas and investing in ourselves, can come up with ideas that change the world. I then had an opportunity to work at a energy efficiency startup, actually with my husband, who's here today too. That was focused on believing that if we could get energy efficiency and energy efficient items into the hands of people, then we could start to change how people viewed them. One particular project that I'm really proud of was a project with the World Bank and the government of Mexico, which we distributed 24 million energy efficient lights to some of the poorest people in Mexico, helping people save money, but also starting to change the way that energy efficiency was done. And then at Tesla, as was mentioned by Stephen, I worked with a fantastic team and many other partners that delivered that Hornsdale battery. Although it was delivered in 100 days, I think it aged me by about 10 years, but still, I think the exciting part in terms of innovation for Australia was at that time, that battery was 10 times larger than any battery in the globe. Too often, I think we downplay the innovation that Australia does. And I think this is a great example of where we can change things. And then finally, as Stephen mentioned, I had the privilege of leading the Southeast Water and the provision of water and sewerage. That helped me understand just how complex that delivery is and how important it is in terms of sustaining all forms of life. Southeast Water has a proud history of being innovative as well, and we were thrilled when 3 years ago it was honoured with being a top 10 innovative utility and resource organisation from the Australian Financial Review. I really do look back at the different opportunities that my career has given me and believe it was because people invested in me and gave me the chance. Education really does have the power to transform lives and what people believe that they can do. It absolutely did that for me. Inclusivity means that we will build peace and get the best ideas because we know that no one has the exclusive hold on ideas. And innovation means that we'll come up with solutions to address future challenges, and some of those challenges we think we can't solve today. And if anyone takes anything from this today, I hope that it is about celebrating Australian innovation. I'm not going to go through it, but some of the areas that I am excited about in terms of Australia is the fact that 90% of solar cells around the world use a technology that was developed at University of New South Wales. That technology fundamentally changed the efficiency of solar cells. Martin Green, the professor there, is known as the godfather of solar. And yet I feel like people talk to me when I'm at conferences outside Australia and less so when I'm in Australia. And there's a range of incredible, exciting startups that are currently happening in the clean energy and broader energy space in Australia. I really hope that we can start to promote those and be proud of our innovative history. We live in a different time from General Sir John Monash, but he showed us the importance of leadership. He showed us the importance of service and integrity. And for me, he also showed us what education, innovation and inclusivity can do. It's a real honour to receive this medal and to be among some of the past winners here, some of who I know. I really look forward to continuing to be part of this great Australian community, inspired by General Sir John Monash. Really grateful for the institutions for investing in me and hopefully contributing back. Thank you.
We've done such an efficient job of keeping to the timetable that we're actually ahead of it. I've just asked Lara if she would be kind enough to take questions today, as I feel she's a subject matter specialist in a number of fields. So if you would like to ask a question, do we have a microphone?
Congratulations on the medal. It's fantastic. Now I'm going to ask, you might think, a rather controversial question about nuclear energy, which obviously is very environmentally friendly until you have to deal with the waste. But let's forget that for the moment. But here we have an Australian who's designed a micro reactor or a mini reactor that can be put on the back of a truck, but he did it in Australia because no one would let him do it here. And that would have been a great Australian invention and a great use of nuclear energy. Why does this country still ban all nuclear energy except for the nuclear submarines? And could this change? And what do you think about it? Do you think it should change? And do you think we should have micro reactors now in our system to be able to supply all the electricity we need?
Thank you for your question. I should say my comments are my own before I get attributed to any of the organisations that I work for or serve. I think it is a really interesting question in terms of understanding the different forms of energy that we have. I don't know about that particular invention that you mentioned, Jeffrey, but for me, my answer to all things generally is to come back to the science and the data. It's going to sound like potentially maybe a boring report for some, but the CSIRO report, what they call a Gen Cost report, that looks at all of the costs of the different forms of energy supply to work out what is the most cost effective. It gets published every 2 years or so and was recently published. I think in terms of that, nuclear as one of the sources of energy does get looked at. And currently, even when they add storage and transmission to solar and wind so that it's a more constant reply, then nuclear still is significantly more expensive than those other alternatives. And so I think, as shown by CSIRO, cost alone is one of those areas. I acknowledge that the small modular reactors are obviously less costly, faster in terms of being able to be deployed, but have shown to be more costly than large nuclear reactors. So at this stage, given I'm not a nuclear specialist, then I look to CSIRO in terms of their data.
Thank you, Lara. Do we have another question?
So I guess a question that perhaps goes somewhat obliquely to the last answer, but you said that when the Hornby battery was built, Hornsdale, it was the largest in the world. I'd be interested to know that was 7 or 8, 9 years ago. What's the current sort of status of battery technology and not so much technology, but rollout scale?
Thank you for that question. So the Hornsdale battery was 100 megawatts, and the batteries that are getting rolled out now are in the 700 megawatts. So that felt like a huge jump at the time in terms of 10 times. Now it's the batteries that are getting rolled out are 70 times as big as they used to be. That's the utility scale batteries. We've seen a large rollout in Australia now of household batteries, so about 600,000 household batteries as well, which is starting to lead to more versions of what they call virtual power plants, so coordinating individual household batteries so they can act like a power plant. So at this stage, a lot of the focus is on reducing the cost of installing batteries and trying to make them connect more quickly. And I think we'll continue to see that evolve.
I think it's really worthwhile finding your knowledge about renewables. I found a lot of my friends don't quite understand how much renewables we have in the system now. You and I talked before about the snow hydro and their usage of Kiwi hydro, Victoria. But I found very useful the AEMO National Energy Market, the NEM dashboard, which tells you at any time whatever state is doing ground coal gas, wind, solar. And that really opens to be price because we're up there 50%.
That's right.
Are there any other ways we can do to learn more about this?
Yeah. I think it's a great point, Michael. So that dashboard that Michael mentioned, as he did say, talks about how I think the last quarter it was just over 40% that solar, wind, and then more with hydro is providing of our current energy system. They also have some great reports looking at it up to 2050 about how that might change over time. I think in terms of what's the best way to understand the energy system, and it's going to feel like a plug, but the Australian Renewable Energy Agency does publish a lot of different reports in terms of looking at technology at the different stages, the research and development stage, the sort of early deployment stage and piloting, and then the commercial stage. And I do find that a great way to understand both what technologies are coming up and which ones are already bankable and happening as well.
Just a quick question. You've got obviously expertise in water and in power.
Yeah.
The new AI data centres obviously impact both.
Yeah.
Can you maybe share some comments about that the implementation of AI data centres in Australia and what impact it will have both with river power and balance?
Sure, and thank you for the question. Data centres do and are large users generally of water and power. And I think the key part there is around the how. So what we're seeing in different countries around the world is the use of recycled water, so water that gets treated through sewage plants and their ability to use that. And I think that is a great example where that can be done. Or where more efficient cooling systems, because the water is used to cool some of the IT infrastructure, where more efficient cooling systems are put in place from the start, then that lowers the demand for water. I think in terms of power, we've seen the recent announcements around renewable power. I think there is the opportunity that data centres bring in additional renewables, but I also think that it's a very busy time for renewables and be interesting just in terms of balancing the connections into the grid and the work that needs to go behind that.
Lara, Rex is my name, and a great presentation on very good topics. I listened to a podcast, excuse me. Listened to a podcast a month or so ago where a couple of environmentalists were saying we've got a problem over the last 10, 20 years. We've made our cause a morally driven one rather than an economic. And it seems to me, having invested in electricity in our house and so on, it was driven by the economics.
Thank you. It's an interesting question. I think one of the key learnings for me when I first went to Tesla and looking at their cars, and at that stage, for those of you that can remember EVs, they were more Nissan Leafs was the key model. And speaking to some of the head of design, they told me, if we rely on people doing it for the right reason, we'll only ever get a small percent. We need to design a car that's more beautiful, that's faster, and over time it's going to be more economic. And then we're not relying on people to do the right thing. We're relying on them to do the thing that they want. And I think it was interesting from a design and a thinking perspective because, yes, ideally we can get the right information out to people and that helps with their choice. But if you make it the most appealing option and then the choice becomes natural. And I think in terms of renewables, we're starting to see that as well. People do it for a range of different reasons. Some people absolutely do it for the environmental benefits that it has. And others are doing it because it gives them control. It means that they've got backup in the case of batteries at their home. If there's an outage, we're seeing more outages with storms. And it also means that they've got a bit more certainty often in terms of their bills. So I think to your point that we are now heading up that traditional S curve, and we can see that with over 30% of Australian households now having solar. And I think the reasons for doing it will be much broader than maybe some of those initial uptake.
Lara, on behalf of the club, we thank you for coming today to accept the medal and to share some of your fascinating career with us. I think it just says so much for the investment that we as Rotarians make in our exchange students to see where it leads. I think you'll get a repeat request to come back for another gig here.
Yeah, great.
All right.
Not as an exchange student.
So thank you very much. I'd like to thank all the visitors and guests for attending today. Adrian Nelson, thank you for the reflection. It was deeply thought through. Phil Endersby, thank you for emceeing the meeting today. And our lunch and reception teams, as always, thank you for setting up the room and bumping it out afterwards. Thank you. A reminder that next week, being the second Wednesday of the month, there's no Rotary meeting scheduled. We meet here at number 35 on the following Wednesday, that's the 19th of August, and our guest speaker will be Tony Aloisio, the Chief Executive Officer of Australian Flexible Pavements Association. The theme will be challenges facing our roads. So obviously he's here to talk about potholes. Details will be in your bulletin and on the website. We hope you can join us.